Welcome to the Living Ageless and Bold podcast. Each episode, I bring you amazing women who inspire, educate, and share their experiences and journeys along the way. So grab a glass of wine or a cup of coffee, find a cozy spot, and let's relax and have some fun hearing what can be accomplished after 55.
Hey, everybody. Well, she's back. One of our resident experts, Melissa B., the PhD. She is an RN. She's a PhD. She's probably the preeminent expert in aging. She runs the aging department at GW University. And I love having her in to have conversations about aging, which is what we're going to talk about today. Hey, Melissa.
Hi, how are you? And talk about bold aging, as a matter of fact. Being bold.
Bold aging. Exactly. And what I want to start with is you were recently featured on ABC talking about the Golden Bachelor. Mm-hmm. And with this incredible success of, who would have thought a dating show for, and I don't know, how old is he? 70, I think, right?
72.
72. So just from this show, what are you seeing in terms of, and we've talked about this a lot on the podcast, ageism. I mean, it's there. But what do you see changing because of the Golden Bachelor?
Well, I think first of all, that the show it's bringing awareness to the fact that even though you're over 50 or over 70, that you can still have a romantic life, and this is still a vital part of life.
Wait, what?
Right. We'll start with low-lying fruit, right? But I do think it's bringing awareness to that. I think it's showing, that most of us do age well. I think there's this thought that a lot of people have when you ask someone about aging, their minds kind of automatically go to thinking about decline and decay, but that's really not a normal part of aging. That most of us do age in a very healthy way. We're living longer lives. We're still vibrant. We still have a lot going on. So life doesn't end, dating doesn't end after the age of 70 if it's something that you want to be part of your life. I've met a lot of older people who are like, I was married once, was married for 40 years. I don't ever want to do that again.
Right.
But that's not true for everyone. So I think it's mostly about awareness. It's about showing, the contestants, are between the ages of 50 and 75. And they're all showing how different they are. So when a lot of times too, when people think about aging, they think all older adults are the same. And it's just like all 20-year-olds aren't the same. People over 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, they're all very different, and the choices we make across our lifespan actually determine how well we're going to age, and our mindsets matter a lot too. I think I've told you that people that have negative thoughts about aging, it can actually decrease your lifespan on average by 7.5 years. So if you buy into ageist beliefs, or you say, well, my knee's hurting now, so I guess it's just a normal part of aging. It's like, well, your other knee's the same age and it doesn't hurt.
So because I have a bunion on my right foot, I should feel good that I don't have it on my left foot.
Right. Well, and bunions aren't a normal part of aging, but they're common. And so I think that's where that's actually one point I tend to make with my students is like, you see a lot of disease and chronic illness in aging, but that's actually not normal, but it's common. And that's really just because of our American lifestyle.
Interesting. And I've heard you talk about, which is fascinating to me, greeting cards.
Oh, yeah.
Are very ageist. Talk about that.
Well, a lot of them are. I'm actually seeing some of that shift because I've actually been and tried to buy ageist birthday cards to make my point. And so I'm actually not seeing as many of those. And I've actually been really proud of all of my friends turning 50, watching on social media. I've only seen 2 out of probably 100 friends that kind of had the over the hill, with the walkers and the black balloons, I've only seen 2 people have that type of birthday party versus I think, 10 years ago, they were really a lot more common, but those are actually ageist birthday cards, anything that has a negative stereotype about aging or shows frailty, and decline as you're over the hill or you can't hear as well or you can't see as well. All of those are ageist messages. And so as consumers, we have a choice to either buy into that and perpetuate it, or just say, I'm not going to buy the ageist birthday cards. And there was actually an initiative out in Colorado where they hired artists to actually create non-ageist birthday cards that represent, vitality and being bold as you age. And so it's a very different message, but it's just one that I hope people pay attention to because it is harmful to our health.
You do always have the one friend, though, that you have to heckle. That, that you're going to give. We just had a friend, and we're the same age, but I did send him like a horrible gif of like 100-year-old trying to blow out the candles. Because sometimes you just have to do that to certain friends. But on a blanket, no, I love this. And this is what the podcast is all about. We are women in our 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, reinventing, recreating. Like the stories and the journeys of these women are phenomenal. And nobody's stopping anytime soon.
Right.
We're just moving forward because we are healthy and wealthy. And I've said this repeatedly, but there is a statistic that this demographic is the healthiest, wealthiest, and most fit in history.
Mm-hmm.
So no aging going on here.
Well, we're aging, but we're aging well. And we're aging in a more positive mindset. Yeah, and you think back, if you compare like the Golden Bachelor to like the Golden Girls, and
right.
And I think Ruth is the actress's name, but I think Mad was her character name. But the one that was always like dating and kind of displaying sexuality and always had her makeup on and was very flamboyant. That was kind of criticized or thought of being as like an oddity. But that's actually normal. And if I've always told my students this too. I was like, think about your grandparents when they turned 50, like the way they dressed, like at that time point, like it actually made them look older than they were. And so you don't know if that's just their personal style or if it was kind of what was expected. It's almost like keeping your hair long. Like I was always told, well, when you turn 50, you're going to have to cut all your hair off. And I'm like, what? And that's not normal. But you look at now, like celebrities like Paul McCartney, there are a lot of older, J-Lo, Jennifer Garner. I mean, there are a lot of people over the age of 50 and we're dressing different. And it's not that we're fighting aging. It's just like, what does my age have to do with how I dress or how I wear my hair? You might have to make some adjustments, like with your makeup, if you wear makeup, just because
your skin,
your skin changes, but you just have to learn how to adapt and grow with that. And I love the fact that your podcast actually talks about kind of, and we talked about this the other day, encore careers, and the fact that you can have multiple encores careers and redevelop yourself and kind of reimagine what you want your life to look like at any age. But the older you are, hopefully you've saved money and you have more resources and you have more time. And so it's almost like you can't have everything all at the same time. Like when I had kids or, a lot of kids in the house, or there were certain things that I could do. I was restricted by that role of having small kids versus now I've got one left. The other two are launching. And it's like, okay, so now what do I want to do? So it's almost like getting to know yourself again. But you've acquired all these skills, all these life experiences. And then how do you repackage those? And so this is where I think it's great with your work, doing PR. It is about promoting ourselves. And, how do we repackage ourselves in a way to say, here's what I bring to the table and here's why you should hire me based on this. It's a big discussion and one I hope that continues. So I appreciate the work that you're doing in this space and really also bringing awareness. And obviously you have a great podcast because you told me the other day you already ranked top 5%. So
top 5%. I know. I'm so excited. And you brought all these things you brought up. We have episodes about that. So Tanya Sterrell talks about fashion over 50 and we talk about wearing a bikini. Now I wear a high-waisted one, but it's okay. But 10 years ago, that was unheard of. Jean Chatzky talks about, the raise you get an empty nest and, what should you be doing with that extra money and how do you use it? You've been raising kids this whole time.
I'm excited.
And then we have so many talking about reinvention, and it's an exciting time. I guess it's the confidence factor too as you get older, and we all say that. It's I just interviewed Jill Rappaport, if you remember her from the Today Show celebrity interviewer, Red Carpet. She was so awesome. She came on with no makeup on. She goes, I'm living ageless and bold. I don't care. She goes, I'm so excited to do this. I had meetings all morning. I didn't have time to put on my makeup. I don't care. I said, we all know what you look like on the red carpet. It's fabulous. There's a time and a place for that. And if you want to come on here, comfortable, happy, who cares?
That's right. Well, I mean, I listen to your podcast the most. So if she hadn't told me she didn't have on her makeup, I wouldn't have noticed.
You're right. Well, that's the thing. It's on YouTube. So it's, yeah, if you're watching on YouTube, but if you're listening, it doesn't matter.
At the end of the day,
okay.
I'll just say this. I remember being about 30 years old, and I went on vacation with two older ladies. It was like three couples that went on vacation. And at that point in my life, I had been very accustomed to like getting up every day, washing my hair, styling it, putting my makeup on. And we went on this vacation in the British Virgin Islands, and we were going to be on this boat for a week. And these two older ladies looked at me and they're like, listen, because they were over 50. They're probably like mid 50s, late 50s. They're like, listen here, we're not wearing makeup. We're not doing this, and you can do whatever you want. And I was like, what? We're allowed to just show up and be ourselves. It was actually like they gave me permission. They're like, we love you for you. We don't really care what you look like. You're beautiful whether you have makeup on or not. So you decide how much effort you want to put into this. And it was like the most relaxing vacation I've ever had. That's also why the intergenerationality of our friendships matter, because they were a little bit older, and it actually changed the way I thought about myself and my image. And I was like, you know what? I don't really want friends where I have to like put on everything to feel like they're going to accept me. So it's just that subtle messaging can make a big difference. But that was a big changing point for me.
And I love you talk about the intergenerational friends, mentors. I've been getting these amazing messages on LinkedIn from younger women who are listening to the podcast. And they're like, oh my gosh, I've been so afraid to try things because I'm afraid to fail. Or, I heard this person say this, and they're just being inspired by these older women to realize, wow, whatever I'm doing now in my 30s might not really matter. In my 50s, I can start all over again. So it's pretty exciting. It's pretty cool seeing these younger women get involved and listen, and listening to people like you and hearing stories like that.
Well, so I was listening to something the other day, and it was talking about someone who created this CV of failure. Yeah.
Yes, I told that was one of my guests wrote the book Next, Joanne Littman.
Okay. See, well, we're influencing each other all the time.
Yes.
But it's like you shouldn't be afraid to fail, because you're going to learn something through the failure. And I'm actually, with all the stuff I'm trying to learn with the podcast and trying to start a new business, and reach out and help caregivers of people living with Alzheimer's disease. It's like, I'm making a lot of mistakes, but at the same time, I'm learning from them.
Yeah.
And you have to be bold and try things, and then just say, okay, well, that didn't work. What mentor do I need? Like, who do I need to work with? So I watch, you and the work you're doing, and a lot of other women, and men too. It's like, what are they doing that's right? And then how can I mirror that, and kind of follow in that path? Yeah. And then the other thing, one of the other things I've been doing the past couple of weeks is participating in this Fab Over 40 contest. And it's a fundraiser for the National Breast Cancer Foundation, but at the same time, it's an anti-ageism campaign in the beauty industry, because a lot of our messages are kind of, that's where they come from. So it's just been interesting to watch that and kind of be a part of it. But at the same time, it's kind of like dual messaging, but we just need more initiatives like that to give people permission to be themselves and to age gracefully, and to try to take care of yourself, because your lifestyle choices matter. And it's like you're preparing your body, your mind, your spirit, to age well by every single choice that you make, starting, at childhood, really, but at least
forever,
when you become an adult.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so we're talking about healthy aging. A lot of people listening have older parents. and my mother's listening to this, and I want to make sure she's listening to this. So my mom is 81. Yeah. And she's amazing. And it's funny because I always tease her. I'm like, you're the most stressed out retired person I know. But then I started thinking about it because she lives in an over 55 community, and she's involved with the play and church and this and that. And she, helps everybody with their technology and video. And, oh, I've got this to do and this to do. And I get so upset that she gets so stressed, but I'm like, but she's doing stuff. Like, she's keeping her mind fresh. If she's setting up everyone's computers and helping them, record DVDs for their family, like, she's not just sitting in her home deteriorating.
Right. Was she like that, earlier in life?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. My mother always worked lots of jobs and she was just always had a very full plate.
Yeah. And so who you are as a younger person is who you are as you age as well. And there may be something about that stress and the activity, that kind of keeps her going, like it kind of charges her up. I would say that it could be good stress or bad stress, and the two of you would have to figure that out. But, stress is something that can age us quicker if it's bad stress.
Right.
So if you're worrying about everything all the time, but kind of like this anxiety of like, oh, I have all this stuff to do. Well, if it's to the point that it's like paralyzing you, then that's not going to be good. But if it's, I have all this stuff to do and I'm really excited about it, but I'm going to have this anxiety about it too, because that's just kind of who I am, then that's okay. So it's like kind of a fine line between being active and being busy and being stressed in a healthy way compared to it being detrimental.
And I'm going to go with, there's a little bit of both. So,
yeah.
Well, so like I said, I know she's listening, so she can think about this.
Yeah. And their stress management, things, because all of our lives are stressful. We need stress, but you could be in the middle of the biggest crisis and still have your calm and your joy. Mm-hmm. And, so like the other day, I was supposed to meet my friend, for an exercise class, and I left a little bit late. And then there was this big detour, and I'm like, I'm going to be like, I was going to be like 3 minutes late. Now I'm going to be 5 minutes late. Now I might be 10 minutes late. But the whole time I just had on like music that I liked. And I was like, there's absolutely nothing I can do. So I have two choices. I can be really stressed about this and end up showing up for exercise class, upset and mad about, I couldn't find my key, like all the stuff that happened, or I can keep my joy. And I was like, I'm going to keep my joy. Yes, I'm taking that last little turn. So when I showed up, I was like, hey, I'm really sorry I'm late. I'm not usually late, but I didn't let it steal my joy. But I had to deal with a lot of stuff to get here today. So, but it's good to see you. So I think
that's what I always say to people when they're like, oh, I'm like, you know what? Life happens. Everybody, if you're late, you miss something, it's, if it happens constantly, that's a whole different conversation.
Right. But, and and I think part of it too is like you learn to do those things because, when I was 20, I would be very upset if all that stuff had happened, and now in my 50s, I'm like, there's really not much need to let it get me worked up. But there are certain things in my life, that I'm like, I need to be doing this or that or whatever. And it can make me feel stressed or anxious. And it's like, well, but that also kind of motivates me to go ahead and do it. Because then if I just do it, then that anxiety goes away. So it really is just a matter of making sure that it's not like paralyzing you or affecting your day in any way. Or, is it a sign, like if it was having difficulty planning and losing things all the time, if it's a change, like that's where we might need to think about, like, is it something going on with her brain, or is there like something else? Because they're just not themselves. What you want to look for is like when they're different, when you're like, she's just not right,
Yeah. Give us some ideas of that. Again, with our aging parents, what are some signs that maybe we should go see a doctor or so, something.
Yeah.
I know you're saying seeing things that aren't quite right, but can you be more specific?
Yeah. So I actually have a podcast about this, like signs to look for, particularly coming into the holidays when maybe you don't see your parents all that much. And maybe you go to their house for Christmas, Thanksgiving or Christmas, you're looking for things that are different. And this is mostly if you're worried that there's a change in their mental status, like is this mild cognitive impairment? Is it normal aging? Is it a mild cognitive impairment? Or are we seeing signs of Alzheimer's disease or a related dementia? Because those changes in the brain start like 20 years ahead of time. Before they become pronounced. Like most people aren't diagnosed with Alzheimer's until like the middle stages. Like it's pretty late because you can compensate and cover up for it. So if you show up at the holidays and like your mom is like one of these people that is everything's always neat. Like I'll know there's an issue with my mom if I ever go to her house and there's like a mess that's been there, or there's like cumulative messes. So looking for things like, is the mail piling up? Are you finding things in different places? Are they not as organized as they should normally are? Like if they could handle making the whole Thanksgiving meal before, and now they're trying to do it because everybody's coming into town, and it's like stressful at like a level it usually wasn't. That could be their inability to plan and handle all of that type of activity. So, but it's really just looking for something that's different for them compared to like how they usually are. And then not getting overly worked up about that, but kind of asking questions, like, oh, I see you have all this mail piled up here, and just making sure they don't have like a reason for it. Like maybe they've had like 4 events that if it's only like a week's worth, like you should see my mail, but it's just looking for things that are out of place or just a little bit off, and then just being aware of it, but having a conversation about it. Because if you ask a lot of people, even with a mild cognitive impairment or early onset Alzheimer's, they can do all the social chit chat stuff with you. But when you start asking them like direct questions, and this is, what year is it? Or, a question about their finances, they can get very angry with you. So a normal response to you asking me about my mail, I'll be like, yeah, it's been like, 3 weeks. I've just been busy. I'm going to get to that next week, compared to me saying like, you mind your own business, when that's not my normal personality. So it's the personality changes or the defensiveness, so those are just some of the things. Or maybe they've sent you an email and what they're writing doesn't quite make sense anymore. So you're looking for language things, and getting lost are usually some of the first signs of like a change in somebody's cognition. And nouns, typically the nouns go first, but if they can't remember like a name or the name of a person, but they, within a few minutes, it kind of, I say, well, it'll circle back. If it doesn't circle back, then that might be something to be concerned about, versus if like a minute later, they're like, oh, now I remember. And it just kind of pops, then that may be more normal aging. And so it really,
I had a great aunt who would go through every woman's name in the family till she got to mine. Like, Jeanette, Annette, Irena. Like she'd do everybody, and then she'd be like, oh, Christina.
Yeah. And that's what she was doing. She was kind of going through in her mind, like, okay, I'm most familiar with this person, but if I keep going down, I can get it. And my grandmother was this way, even with like moderate, she ended up passing away with just moderate Alzheimer's, but she would do the same thing. And so I think that's also generational, because I was like, I would never start with like trying to remember everybody like from their family line or their family tree. Right. She would do it. And then,
but you're right. She probably went down because she was in her 90s and in Germany, and I would only come visit once a year. So that makes so much sense that she would go with the people she knows here, my dad or my aunts, and then my cousins, like go through that way.
Yeah, that was her little pathway, her little rat track. The other thing too is like people can drive from like their house to the store, and back. If it's a path they've done all the time, we call those rat tracks. It's when they have to deviate or solve a problem. Like that could be another sign. Like, here's the situation. Something has happened, like the detour, like me trying to get to exercise class. If I'd hit that detour and I could not figure out how to get where I was going because my rat track got disrupted.
Right.
That's another thing. Like, it's the problem solving and kind of maintaining your cool and your perspective. Like if that's changing, that could be another sign. And again, with that, I would just be like, when's the last time you saw your doctor? Do you have an appointment coming up? And then asking them just to, screen. I have another episode about how to talk to someone if you think that they are having a memory problem. So I can send you that link, and then like what to look for with your parents links.
Yeah, that would be great, because we'll put those in the show notes, because it is very important. I from lots of different episodes that I've done, it's how you ask the question to not make them feel defensive. Right. Anybody, we have an episode about suicide, and we have an episode about aging parents and finances, and you don't ever want to back anyone into a corner. There's, as you know, you're the professional, ways to say it. So yes, definitely send us those.
Well, speaking of suicide, did you know that white males over the age of 65 have the highest completion rate? A lot of people don't think that. They think it's, younger, people, but actually older white males are our highest risk group. And most of them have seen a healthcare provider within 30 days. Wow. So we do need to be aware of that with
aging parents.
And, here's where ageism comes in too, because say somebody took a whole bunch of pills and they just die in their sleep and they're 65. Most people aren't going to question that unless there's like some evidence. And so, I do think that we need to be paying attention to people, make sure they're connected to their communities, make sure we're checking in on them, because I do think
it's so important.
It's overlooked. I mean, you've seen like serial killers on the news who like go in and like smother these little old ladies with pillows and steal all their jewelry. And nobody even questions it because they were over 65. They're like, oh, well, she just died in her sleep. It's like, yeah, but all her jewelry's gone.
Got right. Oh, yeah.
But that's ageism.
And staying aware of, like, if you have older people in your community, I know, we used to have an older couple neighbors, and my husband always checked on them just to make sure, just, hey, kind of walking by, making sure there's activity in the house. And so I know that's really important.
And particularly if you have a couple in your neighborhood where there's someone living with Alzheimer's and their caregiver, to definitely be checking on them, because if something happens to that caregiver, the person with Alzheimer's disease could end up being in the house by themselves for a week, thinking that, and their mind, because their brain is failing, they're like, oh, I haven't been able to wake them up. Then they forget and they move on. And caregivers, a lot of caregivers actually pass away before the person with Alzheimer's because of that stress. So caregiver stress and warnings of that. That's another one. I can send you that one. There's warning signs for caregiver stress, and then making sure that. Oh, go ahead.
I was just say real quick, tell everybody the name of your podcast, because you do have incredible episodes. You have over 3 million views. I mean, it's unbelievable.
It's called This Is Getting Old, Moving Towards an Age-Friendly World. And while we talk about aging and ageism and Alzheimer's disease, we also talk about all the stuff that's not in place for an aging population, because that's really what's getting old. So, right. It's a pun. I love puns.
No, it's good. And when I first met you, and I've known you for many years now, I think we were at a conference together or something, and it was the hotels, and you were talking about there are the hotels that are age friendly. Like I love when I go into a hotel and they've got the magnifying mirror, the light up magnifying mirror, on the wall. It's like, oh, thank goodness, I can do my makeup, just like I do at home. But then there are many that aren't.
Right. And there's an episode about age-friendly hotels, but I don't think that was mine. I did that with Anthony, No Vacancy. But, it's little things, from like when you go to a restaurant and you can't read the menu and you have to pull out your flashlight. Now QR codes have helped with some of that. And I think that QR codes and being able to pull the menu are great in a lot of different ways, because, someone can adjust the size of the font and the contrast and the lighting. But you can also, our phones now can actually read the menu for you. If you have visual impairments, it can be translated into a lot of different languages without having to print, several different menus, particularly if your menu changes a lot. So, but even like receipts are my biggest pet peeve in restaurants. It's like, why has no one thought to just bold these things and make them bigger so that we can see them, so there's. And I can remember actually one restaurant in Fairfax, they would do wine tastings. And before the pandemic, they would do this wine tasting, and most of their demographic was over 65. And I was like, but the one person would stand in the middle of the room and try to describe the wine. Well, depending on where you were sitting and which way they were talking, you could only hear half of what they said.
Yeah.
And I was like, this is not an age-friendly wine tasting. If you would just put a microphone on and use your sound system, then everybody could hear you. It would stop people from talking. And, because you're getting irritated because they're talking over you, but it's because we can't hear you. And after the second glass of wine, like, we just want to.
And then you're talking louder.
Yeah. And so during the pandemic, they did that because they had to wear a mask. Well, then after the pandemic, they didn't stop it because they saw the benefit of it. And I was like, now this is an age-friendly wine tasting. So
there you go.
It's just little things like that, thinking about it from an aging, even though hearing loss isn't a normal part of aging, it's common, but also, I was sitting there and I don't have hearing loss, but I still couldn't hear them.
Right.
So it's just little things like that. And these are great initiatives for someone with an encore career or somebody younger, developing technologies. Just being, I think, awareness, then you begin to see the problem, and then we can generate solutions for it.
I love it. Well, we're going to have you back again because it's always, it's a never ending conversation as we are all aging. Normally I ask the guests the same 2 questions. I'm going to tweak yours a little bit. Normally we ask your biggest success since you've turned 50, which we've asked you already. So why don't you give one tip for people over 50 to help with their healthy aging?
Well, I think that would probably be some of the stuff that I'm actually doing now in my own life, is learning kind of about the role of inflammation and how that impacts the aging process. So I remember like being in my, maybe 30s, hearing about kind of Andrew Weil. He talked about the free radical aging theory, and, free radicals actually lead to inflammation. So, he had like taking vitamin C, like monitoring your stress level. But a lot of our chronic illnesses are kind of metabolic in origin. And as you go through menopause and you get older, that inflammation can impact your ability to lose weight. Drinking caffeine puts stress on your adrenal glands, which decreases your ability to lose weight. So thinking about your diet and what you're eating. So actually I did a podcast episode with Haley Pomeroy, and I've actually been following her plan, eating clean, but it's kind of the timing and what combinations of foods you're eating. And it's been amazing. I've lost like 10 pounds and I'm eating more than I ever have eaten because a lot of times we'll get up and we don't eat until like lunchtime. Well, when you do that, it makes sense biologically because your body thinks you're starving. Like we're going into like a famine here. Versus if you wake up and eat within 30 minutes and you're kind of eating every 3 hours, like smaller meals, your body's like, oh, okay, it's a time of like plenty. I don't have to be stressed. But inflammation, if you're having issues like osteopenia, osteoporosis, even HPV is an inflammatory disease. And if you're having, heart disease, high cholesterol, a lot of those have inflammation as their origin. And if your body's inflamed, your brain's inflamed. And so learning more about inflammation and the role that your diet and exercise, and particularly strength training and flexibility, those are kind of the most important exercises that you can do to reduce your risk of falling, reduce your risk of fracture. So just educating yourself about kind of, okay, here are the diagnoses I've been given, but is there something I can do to reverse those or just get rid of them, just solve the problem? I think that's kind of been my journey, as well as like stress management and thinking about if you can dream it and think it, then you're putting that mental energy and that energy into the universe. And so things can be different.
Oh, I love it. So tell everybody you're about to launch a new program that people listening could very well be interested in. So let's talk about that real quick before we wrap up.
Yeah. So one, I have it's called Caring and Sharing with Melissa B. So if you are a caregiver taking care of someone living with Alzheimer's disease, I'm starting a support group, but it's also information sharing. So you have, you meet with me once a week. And then you have your peer-to-peer support in like an online Facebook group. So that's starting up. And then also if you're caring for an aging parent and something's going on, you're like, okay, I don't have time to like figure this out. I need like an immediate answer. You can set up one-on-one consultations with me through my website, melissabphd.com. And then you can follow the podcast. This is Getting Old on YouTube, all the audio podcast platforms. And then you can follow me on social media, and all my links are on my website as well.
And we'll have everything in the show notes. So once again, thank you. We were definitely going to have you back. You're going to be my quarterly repeat guest, just because it's so much great information for women and people our age. So thanks. So always so great to see you.
Well, I would be happy to do that. And, we've always talked about kind of the cross collaboration and influence, even your work, your PR work. I remember saying to you, it was like, you have a lot of great tips in here for nurse scientists or for nurses in general, for like how to brand ourselves, how to get ourselves in the media. So I really just appreciate the work that you're doing. And I love the fact that you have a podcast now on aging well, on-call careers. So I love to see the synergy of your message with mine as well. So thank you very much for having me.
That's awesome. Bye, everybody.
Thank you for listening or for watching this episode of Living Ageless and Bold. If you haven't already, please make sure you hit subscribe. And if you like the episode, I hope that you will give us a great review. You can also head over to livingagelessandbold.com and sign up for information, inspiration, and exclusive opportunities for us, women over 55. Thanks for listening. And remember, no matter what you do, keep living ageless and bold.